Hey everyone, welcome to our Week 12 NFL predictions video. We will be breaking down who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what we predict the final score will be for Week 12 of the 2023 NFL football season. So let's get started. So this is a Thanksgiving Day week. We have games on Thursday, we have games on Friday, and we also have games Saturday. So there's a lot of spreads of these games. Let's get started. Kicking it off Thursday, November 23rd at 12:30 p.m. on Fox, we have the 4-6 Green Bay Packers versus the 8-2 Detroit Lions. Detroit comes into this game as 7.5-point favorites here. So the Packers with Jordan Love, he has actually been playing pretty good for the last 3 weeks. So he comes in here with 2,300 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 10 picks. Goff is having a great year. He has 2,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 8 picks. When you look at the team stats, Green Bay, they still have problems with the offense. They still have to get the running game going. They are only scoring 20.2 points per game. So that's bottom half of the NFL, one of the worst offenses. Whereas Detroit, they come in averaging 27.2 points per game. So a top 10 offense. And they also have a top 15 defense, giving up 22.9 points per game. But Green Bay has a pretty good defense also, giving up 20.2 points per game. So Detroit has the better offense. They have a pretty decent defense. They are having a very strong year so far this year. Whereas Green Bay has a pretty bad offense, but they have a pretty decent defense. Definitely in the run game, they can shut down the run pretty well. So who's going to win this game? It is obvious that Detroit, as of right now, is the far better team. Like we said, they come into this game as 7.5-point favorites here. They should definitely be able to hold on to get the win. They are home in Detroit. I have the Lions winning this game 27-20. Even though Jordan Love has been doing better, he's still not a good quarterback. He's just serviceable as of right now. The next game that we have on Thursday is at 4:30 p.m. on CBS. We have the 4-7 Washington Commanders and the 7-3 Dallas Cowboys. So Dallas is 11-point favorites here. That's a pretty big spread. Dallas, since they lost to the 49ers, has been playing really well. They do have a top 3 defense, and they have a very good offense. For Washington, they have a god-awful defense, but their offense under Sam Howell can actually score some points. So he comes into this game closing in on 3,100 yards. He has 18 touchdowns, 12 picks. So he does throw some picks, but he also throws some touchdowns. So they have a good offense, but the Cowboys are one of the best rosters in pro football. Like I said, top 3 defense and a top 5 offense. They have Pollard, they have Dak Prescott, they have CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb has been going off. The last 3-4 weeks, he leads the NFL in receiving yards. So they're definitely throwing the ball down the field. Now, the running game is kind of fallen off the last month, but the receiving game has definitely stepped up to take its place. Looking at these team stats here, Washington, they average 21.5 points per game, but Dallas, they come in a whopping 30.2 points per game. That's top 5 on offense. For the defense, Washington's defense is horrible. They give up 27.7 points per game, whereas Dallas gives up 17.5 points per game, which is a top 5 defense. So Dallas should win this game. They are the far better team. That's why the spread is so far there. I have Dallas getting the win at home, 34-14, and covering that spread. And the final game we have Thursday night at 8:20 p.m. on NBC. We have the San Francisco 49ers coming in at 7-3 versus the Seattle Seahawks coming in at 6-4. San Francisco is a 7-point favorite as of right now. When you look at this game, Seattle, they have a pretty decent team. Geno Smith, he is having a pretty good year, but nothing like the year that he had last year. But he is coming in 2,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks. But the 49ers, they have probably the best NFL roster in all of pro football. They have the best offensive roster, and they have the best defensive roster, and they added Chase Young. So that even beefs up the pass rush even better. This is a really good team. They did go through the 3-game losing streak, but since they came back and they beat the Jaguars after that bye week, they've been a completely different team since then. They are back to their regular style of football. Brock Purdy, just don't make any mistakes. Don't try to win the game. Just don't lose them the game. He comes in 2,700 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. When you look at the total team stats, San Francisco comes in, they average 27.9 points per game. Seattle, they average 21.6 points per game. And on the defensive side of the ball, they do have a top 3 defense, giving up only 15.7 points per game for the 49ers. And Seattle gives up 21.8 points per game. So top 5 defense, top 5 offense, that's a really bad mix for Seattle. Now, Seattle is a very good team. They are a very serviceable team, a very efficient team, but they do not have the firepower to be able to keep up with the 49ers. And I'm pretty sure that Walker will also be out. So that's definitely going to hurt them. That's going to put a lot more pressure on Geno Smith, and he's just not a great quarterback. So I have the 49ers getting the win here, 31-17, and definitely covering that spread. And then the rare Friday night game, Friday afternoon game. Friday at 3 p.m. on Prime, we have the 7-3 Miami Dolphins versus the 4-6 New York Jets. So Miami comes into this game as 10-point favorites here. So that's a pretty decent spread for an in-conference, in-division game. But when you look at Miami's team, you definitely see why. They have probably one of, if not the best, offensive roster in all of football. So they have Tua, they have Mostert, they have Arcane, they have Waddle, Hill, Berrios. They have an assortment of riches on the offensive side of the ball. And their defense has actually been playing better the last 2 weeks. They do not have a good defense by any means, but they have an average defense, and they're very good at stopping the run. For the Jets, they have a really good defense, but an atrocious offense. Will they be starting Zach Wilson? That's a big question here. He did get benched last week. He's been awful. This should really be a Tua versus Rodgers game, but Rodgers is obviously hurt. But looking at Tua's stats, so he's closing in on 3,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 8 picks, whereas Wilson, he has 1,900 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 7 picks. So he's basically a guy that'll throw for about 150 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. So he's just not doing anything. He's not bad. He's not good. He's not below average. He's just kind of low average, I guess. He's not really doing anything, but he's definitely not going to get you first downs. That's the big problem because you can't rely solely on that defense. They did win some very close games only off the defense, but that was bound to catch up with them. And the Dolphins, they're not going to give you the opportunity to win 14-10. You have to be able to have a shootout with the Dolphins in order to beat them. Looking at the team stats here, the Dolphins average a whopping 30.5 points per game. The Jets, a pathetic 15.0 points per game. The Dolphins have a serviceable defense, giving up 23.8 points per game, and the Jets give up 20.4 points per game. So I have the Dolphins cruising to the win here. The game might be close, maybe first, second quarter, but the Dolphins should be able to wear them out. They will win 31-17, and they will cover that spread. Next games will be on Sunday, kicking things off at 1 p.m. on Fox. We have the 5-5 New Orleans Saints versus the 4-6 Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons have kind of let things slide for the last 3 weeks. They've been kind of sneaking it up, but they're not a very good team anyways. Now, they have a very good offensive roster, but the problem is the quarterback position. They have great weapons, but they have no quarterback to actually get them the ball. That's the biggest issue there. For the Saints, they do have one of the better structured teams on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball, but Derek Carr has been having a very conservative play so far this year, and he has not been going vertical at all. He's been doing a lot of dink and dunk with Alvin Kamara, but not really pushing the ball down the field. They had Michael Thomas. Obviously, he has a lot of issues going on off the field, but they also have Olave. Haven't really been fully utilizing him the way that they should, but they do have a very good defense. When you look at the team stats here, so the Saints come in, they average 21.4 points per game. They have to get those numbers up, but the Falcons come in at 18.9 points per game. So that's definitely bottom 10. But New Orleans has a very good defense. So they only give up 19.8 points per game, and the Falcons give up 21.7 points per game, which is pretty serviceable. Looking at the quarterback play here, they have Carr. He's closing in on 2,300 yards. He has 10 touchdowns, 4 picks. But he needs to be pushing the ball down the field more. Saints are actually not the favorites this game, but Atlanta is the favorite. They are a 1-point favorite. So this game is virtually a pick-em, but I'm going to go with the better defense to get the win here. I have the Saints winning 24-17 on the road versus the Falcons. So I'm going to go with that +1. Next game at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers coming in at 6-4, coming off that loss versus the Browns, versus the Bengals coming in at 5-5. Joe Burrow is out. Joe Burrow is probably out for the year. That's a massive deal here. So the Steelers have been pretty lucky. They got to face the Browns without Deshaun Watson, and they completely let that game slip out of their hands. Why? Because their offense is completely pathetic. That's the reason why they lost that game. Now they have another game, star quarterback out. Will they let this game completely slip them by, and will their offense again be completely pathetic? The difference in this game is Cincinnati does not have the defense that the Cleveland Browns have. That's a massive difference here. So Pittsburgh is a 1-point favorite versus Cincinnati's backup. That's pathetic that this game is virtually a pick-em versus Cincinnati's backup, but that's just how bad the Steelers' offense is. When you look at the total team stats here, this is going to be somewhat strewed wrong because Burrow's gone, but Pittsburgh comes in averaging 16.6 points per game. Very solid defense, though, giving up 19.5 points per game. Cincinnati scores 20.2 points per game, with an average defense giving up 22.6 points per game. I'm going to go with Pitt getting the win here versus the backup for the Bengals, which they should win, score some points, get some first downs. I have Pittsburgh winning 20-17, so I'm going to go with that +1. Next game at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 1-9 Carolina Panthers versus the Tennessee Titans sitting at 3-7. This game is at Tennessee. Tennessee is 3.5-point favorites here. So with this game, Panthers are trying to get that second win. They're trying to get Bryce Young another win. They just don't have the weapons here. Titans have a pretty decent defense, but their offense has been kind of waffling back and forth. Will Levis, though, he has come in. He had a pretty good first 2 games. Then he fell off, but he's kind of ticking back up right now. He's having a very serviceable time since he filled in at quarterback. He is a rookie. Thankfully for him, Panthers are not a good team. They're not going to score. They don't play great defense. So he has the opportunity to steal a win here. The biggest thing for him, the Panthers cannot stop the run, and the Titans still have Derrick Henry. So they're going to get a steady dose of just running the ball right down their throat. Tennessee is 3.5-point favorites here. Looking at the team stats, Panthers average, both of these teams are just pathetic here. So they average 16.3 points per game. Tennessee comes in at a whopping 16.8 points per game. On the defensive side of the ball, Carolina has a horrible defense. They give up 27.5 points per game, and Vrabel's defense gives up 21.4 points per game. That's the difference here. They have the better defense. They have Derrick Henry. They're going to run the ball down their throat, and that will open up a couple third long passes for Will Levis. So I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans to get the win here, 24-21. So I have them not covering that spread, but a very close, good win. At 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 4-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the 5-5 Colts. Colts are the favorites here at home by 2.5 points here. So when you look at the quarterback matchup, you have Baker Mayfield, who is actually having a pretty decent year so far this year. He is closing in on 2,400 yards. He has 15 touchdowns. He has 6 picks. So he has not been losing in the game at all. He is not the reason that they're 4-6. When you look at Gardner Minshew, so he is filling in for Richardson, who got hurt at the beginning of this year. He's closing in on 1,800 yards. He has 8 touchdowns, 6 picks. So Gardner Minshew, just like Baker Mayfield, you have good Gardner, you have bad Gardner. There's no middle ground. So he will either throw for 3 touchdowns or he'll have 1 touchdown, 3 picks. It's going to be one of those. That's just kind of the way that things work with him. That's also the way that things work with Baker. But for Baker, he has been good Baker the whole season. He's not the reason that they're 4-6, but he's not going to win you the game. He's just not going to cost you the game so far this season. Looking at the team stats here, Tampa Bay comes in, they average 19.2 points per game, and the Colts, they average 24.2 points per game on the defensive side of the ball. Tampa has a very good pass rush. They come in, they average 20 points per game, and the Colts, they average 24.8 points per game. So Tampa Bay definitely has the weapons at wideout. They have Godwin, they have Evans. So there's a lot of weapons there for Baker to get the ball to. They don't have a run game Colts, they have Gardner. They have the really good run game. They have Moss. They have Jonathan Taylor. And that's the reason that they're favored. But like I said, Tampa Bay has a really good line. They will try to shut down the run, force Gardner Minshew to throw the ball. That's the reason why I think Tampa Bay will get the win here. So I'm going to go with the +2.5. I have the Bucs winning 27-24 and getting the upset. Next game coming up at 1 p.m. on Fox, the 2-8 New England Patriots versus the 3-8 Giants. New England 3-point favorites here. This game has everything built up to be one of the worst, most least watchable games of the whole season. Possibly the two worst offenses. There's some pretty bad offenses, but these are two of the worst. These guys are battling basically to who can get the number 1 or a number 2 pick. It's completely pathetic, but it is what it is. For the Patriots, will it be Mac Jones starting? We don't know yet, but he's got 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 picks. He's been awful for the last 2 years. For the Giants, they actually had Tommy DeVito come in. He had a really good game last weekend, throwing for 3 touchdowns. He's the reason that they got the win. So he's played 2 games. He has 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. So far, so good. But is that something that's going to last? I don't know. Bill Belichick will be very prepared to throw the house at a young quarterback. He's going to be trying to confuse him, get him to make mistakes. That's what Bill Belichick does. Even though they stink, Bill Belichick can still light it up on defense. When you look at the team stats here, it's going to be bad. So New England, they average 14.1 points per game. That's not a joke. That's a real number. The Giants, they average 13.5 points per game. This is almost as bad as Iowa Hawkeye football. A complete joke on both sides of the ball. So this is basically a game of who stinks the least. And both of these teams stink. On the defensive side, Patriots, they give up 23.8 points per game, and the Giants 25.9 points per game. Both defenses are okay, but they get lit up because the offense can't get first down. So they're on the field the whole game. I'm going to go. So the Patriots are favored by 3. I have the Pats winning this game 17-14 because of their defense throwing everything at the young quarterback, DeVito. I have them winning 17-14, so I'm going with the push here. Next game at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-3 Jacksonville Jaguars versus the surprise team this year, the Houston Texans, coming in at 6-4. Jacksonville is 2-point favorites here on the road. So the Texans beat the Jags at home earlier this year. The Jags want to return the favor to the Texans here. Jags. So they have Trevor Lawrence, who is nowhere having as good of a year as last year. He comes in, he's closing in on 2,400 yards. He has 11 touchdowns, 6 picks, not having a good year by any means. And he also has a couple fumbles. I don't think he's thrown for 250 yards yet so far. So in 2023 terms, that's not very good. Now, he's not bad. It's just he's kind of fallen off this year. But hopefully he can get things back on track here. For the Texans, they hit the jackpot with C.J. Stroud. He's closing in on 3,000 yards as a true rookie. 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. So his picks have gone up since last week, but it doesn't matter because the Texans are built this year. They have some playmakers, and they have Collins at wideout, so he will be trying to funnel him the ball the whole time. Looking at the team stats here, Jacksonville comes in, they average 23.0 points per game. Texans 23.8 points per game. And on defense, the Jags give up 20.4 points per game, and the Texans give up 20.8 points per game. These teams are virtually tied. They are virtually the same team. The difference, C.J. Stroud has been going off. I see no reason why the Jags should be able to get that to stop here. So even though the Jags are favored, I have Houston winning this game, and I have them winning 27-24. So I'm going to go with that +2. At 4:05 p.m. on Fox, we have the 7-3 Cleveland Browns. They keep chugging along. People keep getting hurt, and they just keep winning. Why? Because they have a top 3 defense, basically. They have the number 1 defense, actually. They're playing the Broncos, who are very hot right now since they got curb stomped by the Dolphins, giving up a big old 70 points. They've been playing very solid here. Their defense has been playing a lot better. Russell Wilson is just not making any mistakes. That's the key there. They come in at 5-5, but they're actually surprisingly hot. Denver is 2.5-point favorites here. When you look at the quarterback matchup here, so Deshaun Watson is out. What's the surprise? The guy never plays. But Thompson Robinson comes in as the starting quarterback for the Browns. He has 295 yards, 0 touchdowns, 4 picks. That's pretty rough. They have the number 1 defense, but even for them, that's going to be a pretty hard thing to carry there. And then when you look at Russell Wilson, he's closing in on 2,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 4 picks. So like we said, he's just not making any mistakes. Get the ball to the playmakers. Every single game comes down to a 1-possession game. Looking at Cleveland, they come in, they average 22.7 points per game. Denver averages 21.7 points per game. But the Browns defense, 18 points per game, and Denver, they give up 26.8 points per game. So the Browns claim to fame. The only thing that they can rely on is just like the Pittsburgh game. They have to win on defense. They have to shut you down. They have to force turnovers. Russell Wilson, though, has not been making turnovers this season, but they're going to bottle him up. He definitely will not be scrambling here, but he has to get the ball to the playmakers. But Denver is the hot team right now. At some point, the Browns have to lose without Deshaun Watson. At some point, that has to catch up with them. I have the Browns losing this game. I have Denver winning 20-17 and covering that spread. At 4:05 p.m. on Fox, we have the 4-6 Rams coming in versus the Cardinals sitting at 2-9. Kyler Murray is now back for 2 straight weeks. The Rams come in as a half-point favorites here. So this game is pretty much as a pick-em as it could possibly be. That line's probably going to move. Will they still be favored come Sunday? I don't know, but they are favored right now by 0.5 point. Stafford, he's actually not having a bad year like yardage-wise, but he's throwing a lot of picks, and he's been banged up, he's been hurt, he's been missing games, but he comes in as the quarterback. As of right now, he should be starting on Sunday. For the Cardinals, they have James Conner at running back, they have Brown, they have Kyler Murray back. With Kyler Murray, you don't know what you're going to be getting because we haven't seen this guy play football in a long time, but he has played the last 2 weeks. He's had some ups, he's had some downs. That's to be expected. He's pretty rough. He's pretty rusty right now. Why are they playing him? I don't really know. I don't know if they're trying to play him as trade bait so that if he does well, they can trade him, or if they're really trying to be competitive, or if they want to bomb, trade him, and try to get a top 5 pick and either get Caleb Williams or Drake May. People don't really know right now. What's the point of winning when your team is so horrible? Stink as much as you can. Try to draft a top quarterback. But if you're trying to keep Kyler, then you obviously want to stay competitive. But looking at the team stats here, the Rams, they average 19.5 points per game. Cardinals, 17.5. And on defense, the Rams give up 22.0 points per game. Cardinals, 25.8. But like we said, a lot of those stats are without Kyler Murray. So he's the kicker there. He's the difference maker. Even though the Rams are favored, I'm actually going to go with Kyler Murray to make the difference here and get a little bit of an upset, if you want to call it that, because they're only half-point favorites here. But I have the Cardinals getting the win, 23-21, so I'm going to go with the plus 0.5 point. But that line's probably going to move. Next game at 4:25 on CBS, the 7-3 Kansas City Chiefs versus the 5-6 Raiders. KC comes in as 9-point favorites here. So with Kansas City, they just lost that heartbreaker to the Eagles. That was the rematch of the Super Bowl. That was the worst performance from a receiving core I've ever seen in my life. Even Travis Kelce dropped and fumbled balls. That's pretty bad. But guys were dropping wide open touchdowns, wide open passes, non-stop. I've never seen that many drop balls before. It's completely pathetic. But they do have an extremely good defense. So even if they drop balls, that defense would definitely keep them in the game. For the Raiders, sitting at 5-6, so they fired Josh McDaniels, 3 weeks ago? They have Pierce in as the interim coach. They won some games, and then they got beat by the Dolphins. That was bound to catch up with them because they're not a very good team. They don't have a bad roster, but Josh Jacobs cannot fully carry this team. They have no starting quarterback. That's the biggest issue right there. They have Devontae Adams. They have weapons. It's the quarterback position that's holding them back. And the Chiefs, they get after the quarterback. They pressure the quarterback. They sack the quarterback. No matter who's starting, if it's O'Connell, let's say, he's going to get hit. He's going to get sacked. And he stinks when the pocket's clean. So if there's no pocket, he's just going to be getting beat up, fumbling, throwing picks. So the Chiefs definitely should be favored here, and they are favored by that 9 points. Looking at the team stats, KC comes in, they average 22.5 points per game. Las Vegas, a pathetic 16.8 points per game. Looking at the defenses, the Chiefs only give up 16.4 points per game, and Las Vegas 20.5 points per game. So Chiefs should definitely be favored. I have them getting an easy win here, getting back on track, winning 27-14, covering the spread. Even if they drop 10 balls, the defense will beat up the Raiders so much that they're going to win, and they're going to cover no matter what. At 4:25 p.m. on CBS, this game would have been billed as one of the best games of the year preseason. As of right now, not so much. But the Bills are 6-5. The Eagles are 9-1. But this could still potentially have playoff implications. Bills must win this game. They cannot be hovering as a 500 team. People are definitely going to be fired after this year. Firing Ken Dorsey was not the problem. Head coach, you got to go. You wasted Josh Allen's best years. Nonetheless, though, here, the Bills, they have to win this game. They have to get to 7-5. They have to beat someone good. They cannot drop to 6-6 at Week 12, because then they will definitely not be making the playoffs. But Philadelphia is 3.5-point favorites here, coming off of their win versus the Chiefs. For Philly, they're the most under-the-radar one-loss team I have ever seen. I think it's because they're nowhere near as good as they were last year, but they're still good. They're not great like they were last year, but they're still good. But somehow they're still 9-1, so props to them. They have so many weapons. They have Hurts, Swift, A.J. Brown, Smith. This team is loaded with weapons, and they also have a top 3 O-line. Bills, though, have a very good offense led by Josh Allen, coming in at 2,900 yards, 22 touchdowns, 12 picks. So he definitely throws some picks. Hurts, 2,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. Looking at the team stats, the Bills, they can move the ball. They average 26.7 points per game, and Philly can move the ball also. They come in 27.3 points per game. Looking at the defense, the Bills do have the better defense, giving up 17.3 points per game, and Philly 21.2 points per game. So I can definitely see an outcome where the Bills win this game. They have the better defense, and they have an offense that can score. When you have Josh Allen, anything can happen, because he could go for 350 and 3 touchdowns. He could also go for 350, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. So we just don't know what's going to happen. But it's almost a 50-50 game, so that's why the spread is so low. But I do think that Philly is going to get another win here, and they're going to move to 10-1. I have the Eagles getting the win 27-24. So I do not have them covering that spread, but that line could easily move. But like I said, I could definitely see a world where the Bills get the win also. But I'm going to go with the Eagles as of right now. In the final game Sunday night at 8:20 p.m. on NBC, we have the 8-3 Ravens. They are back to their winning ways. They've looked really good the last 2 weeks. They are going up against the Chargers, sitting at 4-6. Baltimore is 3.5-point favorites here. So when you look at the team stats, Baltimore comes in. They are one of those teams with a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense. Hands down, one of the best teams in all of football. They average 27.6 points per game. Chargers can move the ball. They have Herbert. They average 25.9 points per game. It's the defense where you see the big difference. So Baltimore, they only give up 16.1 points per game, and the Chargers give up 23.8 points per game. So the Chargers defense is not good at all. They have a lot of holes. They have some great playmakers, but they have a lot of holes, and those holes are always exploited. Head coach, you're going to be gone after this year. They need an offensive-minded coach for Justin Herbert. He's a great quarterback. He has weapons. He has Eckler. He has Allen. So he has weapons to get the ball to. But the Ravens also have weapons. They have Lamar Jackson. He is the X factor. They lost Andrews. That's a massive loss. That's not to be underestimated. But even without him last week, they were moving the ball. They were scoring. So I have the Ravens here. They're going to get the win 28-24, and I have them covering that spread. And the Chargers will be dropping to 4-7. So the hot seat's going to be really hot. And our final game of the week, the Monday night game at 8:15 on ABC, the Chicago Bears at 3-8 versus the Minnesota Vikings sitting at 6-5. Minnesota is 3.5-point favorites here. So Chicago Bears, they have Justin Fields back. and it's good that they do. This guy's putting up crazy stats for having missed so many games, but he's closing in on 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, six picks, ran for over 100 yards last week. So if you have him on fantasy, as long as he's healthy, he's going to light it up because he'll throw for 200, 250, but he'll also run for 80 to 100. So that's just crazy. As long as you have him, since he is back to being healthy, they will be able to move the ball because the Vikings do not have a good defense. But what they have is they finally lost this past week, but they were on an extremely long winning streak. They lost Jefferson, they kept winning games. They lost Kirk Cousins, they kept winning games. They lost, they have Josh Dobbs now, and he's 2-1. So he's been winning games as the backup quarterback. And the big news is Jefferson should be back this weekend. That's going to be a massive relief for Josh Dobbs. And the Bears do not have a good defense. When you look at the team stats here, Chicago, they average 20.9 points per game. Minnesota, 23.0 points per game. And on defense, Chicago is not good. They give up 26 points per game. Minnesota's serviceable. They are average. They give up 20.9 points per game. So I have Minnesota getting the win here. I think that they will be able to move the ball. They can run. They have Justin Jefferson back, so they'll definitely be able to throw. And the Bears just will not be able to keep up because they won't be able to stop the team. Justin Fields can't do everything. I have the Bears losing. I have the Vikings winning 30-24, and they'll cover that spread. So that's my breakdown of the Week 12 NFL predictions. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks.